The harsh truth is that Ireland underperformed when it mattered, had the opportunity to create history this year in the Six Nations by winning it 3 years in a row and dropped the ball when it mattered. And Scotland, were there ever really a chance to win it this year? Before we get into it, let me know in the comments what you guys thought of the Six Nations this year. What did you think of Ireland and Scotland's performances? As you know, I only covered Ireland and Scotland this year in the Six Nations, so I'm only reviewing these two teams. What do you guys think? Scottish fans, Irish fans, let me know in the comments what changes need to be made, coaches changes, selections changes. Let me know in the comments. What are your honest opinions or reviews of this year's Six Nations for your team? Let me know in the comments. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get into it. So Ireland, while only losing one game, really lacked energy, cohesion, killer instinct. That Ireland of old, that Ireland we kind of all become accustomed to, that Ireland that were ruthless on defense, that were all class in attack, their execution, creativity, all of that around attack was just class. And while we saw this in small instances in the game versus England, in the game versus Scotland, when it all mattered, when it mattered the most, we didn't see any of this at all. For a side that put themselves in a position to create history by being the first team to win the Six Nations 3 years in a row, they did not live up to the hype at all. And big questions, I feel like, need to be asked and answered. This is going to be a harsh review of Ireland and Scotland. But that's how I see it. I do think changes need to be made, whether that's around how they play the game or selections changes. That can be answered and asked by the bigger ups, I feel like. But out of all of that, the one thing that has worried me the most about this Irish group is the next generation of players coming through, that next crop of players coming through. Ireland farewelled 3 absolute legends of the game, of Irish rugby. But what now? At 9, you had Jamison Gibson-Park playing or starting all of the games, and you had Conor Murray on the bench. No other 9s were used in the Six Nations. You're telling me there's not a better or not another up-and-coming 9 that could have been blooded in or could have been brought in, at least gotten 20, 30 minutes versus Italy or Wales? You're telling me that couldn't have happened? Peter O'Mahony started 3 games, benched 1. That other game where he didn't play at all, Ryan Beard, who's usually a lock, played at 6 with Jack Conan benching, and Cian Prendergast bench versus Wales. And that was it. No one else was used while they knew Peter O'Mahony was moving on again. So Cian Prendergast was the only 6 used. The other 6s that were used, Ryan Beard, he's a lock. And then sometimes like Ty Byrne is another one they look to. He's also a lock. Like, who's the next crop of guys coming through? You're looking at the other legend, Cian Healy, benched 3 games with Jack Boyle benching 2 of those other games. And Jack Boyle, the only debutant to play in the Six Nations this year with Ireland. And I'm not for handing out caps, right? But what next? What now? Yes, you've got the British and Irish Lions, and then the Autumn Nation series. So is that when they're going to start bringing these guys through? This is a very, very interesting period Ireland are going through at the moment. Expectations super high after the back of back-to-back Six Nations titles, and then touring South Africa last year and drawing a series, to this year coming 3rd in the Six Nations with no excuses. £6 million or euros or whatever it is left on the table because of that poor result. Do they enter a rebuild phase now? They need to bring in a whole crop of new players. So yes, a slight rebuild is probably on the cards. But again, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I just know that something needs to change because teams are slowly starting to figure or have figured Ireland out. And that was always Ireland's strength, where they had creative moves. They were asking a lot of questions with ball in hand. that defenses didn't know how to answer, and now they do. The biggest assets, because I will say there is still a bit of positives to take from the Six Nations, and that was that Sam Prendergast played a lot more games. He's got a lot more games under his belt. He's been in the tough situations and has kind of learned a little bit of how to handle them, although there is still a question mark around the 10 jersey for Ireland. And then the other positive was Jack Boyle making his debut in a position that is definitely need, like you always need depth in the front row. Other than that, yes, Dan Sheehan coming back and being outstanding, great as well. Jack Conan, a resurgence of Jack Conan, that's been great. But what are we seeing next? Yes, they've got the academies. I feel like Ireland have got the players there, the younger players to come through, but they need to come through. That's all I'm saying. Irish fans, what do you guys think? I think finishing third at a Six Nations is definitely not good enough for Ireland for what how their structure is built around producing players, coming through all the systems, the schools, the academies, Leinster, Munster, Connacht, wherever Ulster they're coming through. They need to be producing better at the international level. Jumping over to Scotland. Scotland, again, all the hype heading into the Six Nations, but nothing comes from it. Again, still don't see the identity of how they want to play. In patches, yes, shifting that ball around, using the ball really well, but then again, they can in the same game fall back on a just kick and hope for the best. Up and unders, let's try and contest that and let's see what happens. Injury to their talisman, to their leader, to one of the best players in the world at the moment, Toi Polotu, definitely knocked the wind out of their sails, and I think it impacted them a bit more than what they'd like to admit. Were Scotland ever really in it? Dominant performances, yes, versus Italy and Wales, but got dominated versus the rest. And let's be honest, yes, versus Ireland, there was the early injuries to Finn Russell and Darcy Graham. Couple of calls that could have gone their way versus France. I think outdone versus England. But is the question that needs to be asked, I think the quality in depth a big issue here. Or maybe it is a bench not being used correctly. Because if you're looking at the URC teams, like you're looking at quality within the sides, Glasgow playing outstanding rugby, URC winners last year. Edinburgh playing outstanding as well. I don't think necessarily that there's a depth issue. I think maybe the bench is not being used correctly. And that's something that's maybe looking towards the higher ups, maybe looking towards a different face to lead the Scottish side. So again, they've got the players there. I feel like they've got the players there. They just can't take that last hurdle. And me saying that that's not the bench being used correctly, maybe that's only scratching the surface. Maybe there's deeper issues that run within the Scottish lineup. But we can see, like Scotland in games, there's patches in the games that they're really in it. And you look at the caliber of players that they've got, your Finn Russells, your Blair Kinghorns, your Duan van der Merwe, Hugh Jones, Darcy Graham. Up front, you're looking like Rory Dodge, Xander Fagerson, Pierre Skuman. Quality players, right? That some of them you would be picking in your World XV team, but just can't seem to put it all together. The big positive for me in the Six Nations this year was the resurgence of Blair Kinghorn. How fantastic, how good was he this year? Bringing that bits of flair, the French flair that he's learned from Toulouse, bringing that into the international scene and hopefully bringing that within the squad as well and rubbing that off onto the players within the Scottish setup. Definitely played his way into a British and Irish Lions probably starting squad. I would have Blair Kinghorn starting at 15 for British and Irish Lions. But other than that, again, not living up to the hype that was the hype before the Six Nations and the hype that we've heard from within the Scottish, or probably not from within the Scottish camp, probably from the spectators and people like us, me talking about it, and just not living up to that. Both Ireland and Scotland underperformed at this year's Six Nations. For me, a brutal but fair review of Scotland and Ireland's Six Nations tournament this year, in my opinion. Scottish and Irish fans, what do you guys think? Was it too brutal, too honest? And changes need to be made, questions need to be asked and answered. I think a lot needs to happen between now and the Autumn Nation series. We will see the best of these guys being picked for the British and Irish Lions and them getting a good crack there against the Wallabies. But what happens in the Autumn Nation series, and I'm very excited to see about that. And hopefully we see some bits of change. Again, what did you guys think? Let me know in the comments. Hit that subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time.